3 months ago. People in the private sector, I fire every one of them. And then they don't meet, and then they had this November revenue conference where it looks worse, and then it's near the holidays, so they don't meet. The governor's late with his, his budget, every single year for 8 years. The Auditor General doesn't do the audit on time, even though it's a state law. Never did it on time. Last year completed, it's supposed to be done December 31st, he completed it June 2nd. No one writes about it, nobody cares, and of course, like Alan Greenspan leaving the Fed, he left last week because he knows the whole thing's falling apart. That's what's happening. That's why Mr. O'Keefe left the state government. They know. That's why Bill Murphy's getting out in February. They know. It's about to collapse. So, last year they didn't fund the pension, and like the scene from the French Revolution, they take the free health insurance for a part-time gig, effectively evolved to, I don't even write eat cake, but that's, And what we really need, of course, and I always think of, by the way, not to get too much history on you, but I always think of Colleen Connolly, and I think of Days of the Market Women, which, if you study the French Revolution, there were these women, not as attractive as Colleen Connolly, I don't think, in those days. They were poor women, and they'd had enough, the price of bread went up 3 times, and they went out to Versailles, and they got the king. And Marie Antoinette, they brought him back, and they chopped off their heads. Eventually, after a year or two of sitting around in the city of Paris.
I like that idea.
Well, I'm not advocating any violence, but that's what they did. That's figuratively what we have to move in that direction of enough is enough. People are leaving Rhode Island. If we don't fix our problem now, we're not going to recover. And we need jobs. Jobs. Of course jobs. Go ahead, Joe. So here's what I think we have to do. And it's not a simple plan. It's not an easy plan. It's not here to make people feel good, which is why I think people probably, maybe even the state, really can't bear to hear it. Go ahead, Joe. We have to, the pension system. It needs to be ended. We've tried 3 fixes in 4 years and do the assets match the liabilities? No. There's $6.6 billion of assets, and who knows how many liabilities now because they haven't produced an actuarial report, even though they fixed it, right? And they won't produce them. They'll try not to produce them until after the next election because it'll look really bad. It always looks really bad when people rush out the exits and retire more than actuaries expect. It looks worse when you don't put the $70 million in you were supposed to last year. It just looks worse. And by the way, not to get off topic again, but I always just wish, in the end, when someone talks about the pension plan, anybody in the media, the question should be, so how are you going to make the assets match the liabilities? That's the question. If you don't have an answer for that, get the hell out. If you're not trying to do that, go. Because all you're really trying to do is pass the buck to the next guy, and we've done that for 40 years. And as bad as the state pension system is, the local ones are worse. There's a Coventry pension with, I don't have it in front of me, $5 million in assets and $78 million in liabilities. There's one board pension that's funded, there's another one with $270 million liabilities. Over and over, I started Cranston, the city council, if you weren't around for this, and why there was a supplemental tax, was that a 9-0 Democratic city council and a Democratic mayor voted to take all the money out of the pension plan to balance the budget. It was $18 million in July 1st, before I became mayor. I become mayor, there's $9 million left. And what was a stupid political thing, I actually funded it and left the city with a $50 million of assets. No one even knows. But that's what I do. That's what has to be done. So we have to end it. And it can't go to the next slide, Joe. I've heard people say, well, it can't be done. It's against the law. All these things. If you just go to the General Treasurer's website, go look at the reports, you'll see that you can. First of all, that's the state law. Luckily, we're not in New York where the state pension system is part of the Constitution. Doomsday. I don't know what they're going to do. Just forget it. But we can, and we have changed the pension system. And it's time to tell all the state workers we're really sorry. We're sorry they screwed it up. We're sorry you didn't sue every year. We're sorry it's the union, public sector, union leaders who drive around in their fancy cars who screwed it up for everybody. But they did. That's it. And if we want to get ahead of the debt curve, go ahead, Joe. We have to do this. We have to say, when people talk on TV, on radio, they say we can save $1 million doing this, and $300,000 doing this. I don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. You don't have time for that. We've got to get $500 million out of the system. 350 comes from the state, 150 from your city, which means the average city could cut property taxes 10% on that alone. Is it easy? No. No. Would there be a fight? Yes. Is it the only way to reduce the debt load? Yes, because that's where most of the debt load comes from, folks. I mean, you have to talk about where the money is. So the state workers actually, when I've talked to many state workers, you know, there's always the egregious example, the Southern 89 on their last breath. Obviously, we're not going to stop sending them a check. There's other situations. The extreme example is always used to say you can't do something. But generally speaking, someone who's 50 who retired, heaven forbid, right? Someone who's 50 who retired, who's got a check for $33,000 going up at 3%, it's going to be $1 million, they're going to live to 80. We say, listen, we don't have $1 million over the next 30 years. Here's a check for 500 grand. Put it to a 401k plan, self-directed IRA, cash it and move away. But we can't do it. Once we do that, you know, businesses will look at us in a whole new way. Who loses though? The public sector union bosses. There are two things that absolutely must happen. We were the only city on the East Coast to ever put health savings accounts in, as an option. Health savings accounts means they're portable. People can move with their health insurance. And same thing with these 401k plans. By the way, the thought process, this is the other side of the argument the state union heads come up with. Well, people have suffered with their 401k plan. Well, whatever. So they suffered, you suffered, but the state workers don't suffer? No, that's not it. They serve us. And by the way, many of them want to serve us, but the ones who don't, that's too bad. It's just the way it is. So we do this. Go ahead, Joe. You know, we get the social safety network. 46% of all spending are somehow attached to, and Bill Feldman will talk maybe more about this or knows more about it, but that's basically where it goes. Now, you know, we've got to match eligibility to national averages. We have a situation, I have a couple here, there's dozens of these. And Mayor, of course you can do this. People come and say, once again, you can't do it, right? You're on your show. Oh, we can't do that, we can't do that. And the labor board will say, we can't do that. The labor board is, the people who, by the way, the labor board has really no power. So why do people even talk about it? I lost every time at the labor board with the crossing guards, but we won the lawsuit and they got fired. I'll give you an example. We want 90% of the people at the top to take care of the 10% of the people at the bottom. We do. But liberal Rhode Island, drive to the Cranston prison complex. Drive around it. Look where, by the way, the governor took down a building and then didn't build a state police headquarters there. All right, a couple $1 million wasted. But drive around it and say to yourself, is this really helping people? No, it's decrepit. It's horrible. It's not how we should be treating people. But we don't have any other money because it goes to this other stuff. But just for example, income threshold for jobless and working parents for a family of 3. The U.S. median is 41% of the federal poverty guidelines. Rhode Island, 175% above the federal poverty guidelines. It's not whether we want, there's other statistics like that, not whether we want or don't want to do this. We can't do it because people can move. And they can keep going back and forth among states. So, you know, we have to at least have everybody recertified. And I mean, when I say recertified, I mean me, Colleen Conley, and a couple of people, you know, people have to come in and say, yes, I'm on welfare and here's my situation and so forth. Believe me, 10, 15% of them will never show up. They will never show up. Yeah. And that's how you drive costs now. No one does it. You have to do it. And I don't know, you know, once again, how much money can you save doing that? At least a couple $100 million. So now we're just taking $700 million, hopefully $1 billion out of the cost structure. Now, we can start talking. Go ahead. Property taxes. I guess I could go through every one of these things. I've written op-ed pieces about it. I've been on radio shows. I've hosted radio shows. I've done whatever I can to explain to people. But I went through with several of my friends years ago. We went through every law. And the backward way that it's being done now, where the governor says, hey, you know what? We have a deficit. I didn't know about it. Of course he knew about it. But I mean, we have a deficit. And the state reps are all surprised, but they're not surprised. And so everybody's like, oh, what do we can't change? Of course they can try to change, and they're trying not to try to change, but they can. But it would have been better to pass these laws during the budget cycle, where you can then look at unfunded mandates, eliminate them.